Hello. Okay, so chapter 3 is the juicy one. Chapter 3, jumping into my 20s recklessly. Seriously. I graduated in June of 1982. And in July, I said goodbye to my mom and my 2.5-year-old little sister Sabbath, still living in the Greenery Apartments in Campbell, to move up to my grandmother's house on Cannery Street in Oakland. I was excited and nervous, but with my stones of spirituality, joy, and hard work always firmly planted underfoot, I was ready to work at Leo's and prepare to start school at Alameda College in the fall. My Aunt Trudy, who was only 5 years older than me, and my brother Gilbert, also only 5 years my senior, both stayed with my grandmother. We would all laugh and hang out from time to time, but mostly we all had our own lives. By the time school started, I was familiar with the public transportation, buses, and BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit, the subway, so I could get around the Bay Area effortlessly. I would go to school for a few hours in the morning and then work at the pharmacy for a few hours and then explore the Oakland area when I got off work. From walking around Lake Merritt, window shopping at Saks Fifth Avenue and I-Magnin, to people watching, there was a lot to do. I met some of the people that worked at the stores near Leo's. One of the managers at a nearby leather clothing store asked if I wanted to be in a commercial they were filming. Heck yeah! It was fun. It came on late night TV. Too bad I didn't get a copy for memory's sake. I loved Oakland. It was different from Campbell, where blacks were the obvious minority, to Oakland, where the blacks were the obvious majority. I was the only black person in my senior class high school, so there were no black guys my age at school. But in college, there was an abundance of Afrocentric, masculine eye candy. Don't get me wrong, I loved growing up in Campbell. I had great friends of all races. Sandy was Caucasian, Diane was Mexican, Mahialani was Hawaiian, and my first crush, remember him, Richard? He was Mexican too. I had Asian, Indian, and Persian friends too. It helped me love people for who they are and ignore the color of their skin. We were all the same. We laughed, cried, played, and loved the same. But I would be lying if I said it didn't bother me that there were not more black kids in my school or neighborhood. In Oakland, on every bus, walking down the street, every other car, and even in my classes, there were plenty of black men of all shades, heights, and levels of intellect. I met and dated a few guys, but nothing serious. One day, Trudy and I were driving around Oakland and stopped at a fast food place to grab something to eat. We were chatting and saw two guys looking our way. They were my age, so Trudy and I assumed one of them was interested in me. They said hi. We said hi. One of them came over and introduced himself. "Hi, I'm John, and that's Charles," he said with a big smile as he pointed at his friend. I giggled and said, "Hello, my name is Carol." People who are obviously nervous or behaving predictably are always funny to me. And that was the beginning of my first relationship. John and I became inseparable. He lived with his mom, dad, sister, and brother. They were all very nice. John was what his family called him. He was a mechanic and loved to work on cars all day long. He would hang out at his house or my grandma's house, so my family knew him well. After a couple of months of dating, we talked about getting an apartment together. Trudy was dating someone as well. His name was Scotty. Trudy and I discussed finding a house for all of us because it would be cheaper to split the rent 4 ways, and it would give us more space and privacy. Bad idea. Scotty and Trudy had a turbulent relationship. They would yell and argue regularly. After a few months, Trudy found out she was pregnant. Scotty lost his job, so Trudy started paying their share of rent by herself. John wasn't working, so I was also paying our share of rent on my own. Neither of the guys would cook or clean, so Trudy and I were not having it. Trudy and I decided to stop renting as a group. She and Scotty broke up, and I told John that I needed someone more responsible. John enrolled in a mechanics trade school and got a job. I was ready to move out, so John moved back to his parents' house. Unfortunately, our relationship just did not feel the need I had, so we broke up. We remained friends and would see each other around town every few months. Trudy had moved back to her mom's, my grandma, Mama Ethel. She moved back to her house. She had a beautiful little girl she named Samantha. I found my own apartment a few blocks south of Lake Merritt and began a new journey on my yellow brick road. It became a very rocky road. I loved my new apartment on East 15th Street. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, and I could see down to the street. I loved people watching. The apartment was walking distance to shopping and the theater and Lake Merritt. I would regularly go walk Lake Merritt or sit by the water, then catch a movie. I saw Purple Rain about 7 times. Yes, I loved it. The owner of Leo's Pharmacy, Julian, was also part owner of the Oakland Athletic Club, an exclusive membership-only sports club for businessmen and community leaders and their families to work out, swim, and socialize. He knew that I was majoring in accounting at Alameda College, so he mentioned that there was an opening in the accounting department at the OAC, short for Oakland Athletic Club. I applied and was offered the job. I worked there a few months, but the accounting department was closed in and boring. They needed me to work the pro shop as well, and there were not enough hours to give me the money I desired. I put college on hold for a while. So that I could apply for full-time employment, doing something other than accounting and working the pro shop at the OAC. I was working through a temp company when I was sent on an interview to a company called Northwestern National Life Insurance. NWNL needed a receptionist. I had a good speaking voice and I knew how to be professional, thanks to my education in Campbell and working at Leo's and the OAC. I got the job. Thank you, God. I was so excited. More stones of hard work and spirituality were laid on my path. I loved it. The people there were fun to work with, and I made a few friends almost immediately. 2 other women named Lynn and Gloria worked at NWNL, and we quickly became great friends. We would go to lunch together and hang out after work together. I was given an opportunity to go to the home office of NWNL in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to be trained as an insurance claims examiner. It was a 3-week training program, and all expenses were paid by NWNL. Yes, nice. They asked me if I wanted to go. Heck yeah! Purple Rain was filmed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I would get to that club where the movie was set, one way or another. Stones of fun easily fit onto my path daily when I was obedient to my faith and spirituality. While in Minneapolis, I learned to be an excellent claims examiner. Hard work, fun, support, love, respect, and spirituality stones all made a place on my path during that adventure. I worked hard to learn everything I was shown. I made it fun for myself and others to take the stress off during the long training sessions. All 15 of the trainees were from all over the United States, and we supported each other through the new trainee program to ensure it was a success. We grew to love the jobs we were doing and the company we worked for during those 3 weeks. The respect that our trainers showed us was reciprocated by all of the trainees. so everyone was happy. God's hand was evident by the faith that we had in each other, the prayers that were said prior to meals, and the belief that God was taking care of our families at home while we were thousands of miles away. We were offered the opportunity to go home after the first or second weekend, then return for the balance of the training. I elected to go on the second weekend. I flew home, then Trudy came with Samantha. Oh, I flew home, then Trudy came with Samantha to pick me up. My little cousin was getting big fast. I asked if I could borrow her car the next day to run errands before I had to fly back to Minneapolis. She said, of course. It was Sunday, late afternoon, and I was scheduled to fly back to Minneapolis on Monday morning. I was driving Trudy's car, headed back home from the store, when I passed a guy who had a flat tire and looked stressed out. I pulled over and asked if he needed a jack. I knew Trudy had one. He said he did. I opened the trunk and let him use the jack while I sat in the car. Yes, he was a total stranger, but he is also a child of God in need of help. It only took about 15 minutes, but it had turned from dusk to dark. He packed the jack back in the trunk and thanked me profusely. I said, no problem, just return the favor to someone else. He said, God bless you, sister. I said, God bless you too. I got in the car and started to drive the 3 blocks to my house. I was mentally going over my checklist for my trip back to Minneapolis. I had my traveler's checks, I had my dry cleaning, and I was turning left to pull onto my street and find a parking spot. I heard the whoop whoop. Yeah, that's the police siren. Whoop whoop of a police siren and saw the lights flashing behind me. Oh my goodness. The first thing that flashed in my mind was, what did I do? But the second thing was, I was supposed to be on a plane to Minneapolis in the morning. I can't go to jail. I was going to have to think fast. After I found out what the heck he pulled me over for, because I was an unlicensed driver. Oh, I was going to have to think fast after I found out what he pulled me over for, because I was an unlicensed driver. That makes sense. I was 20 years old and had not been licensed. Yes, I had been driving since I was 16, but never took the test to get licensed. Lazy, disobedient, and about to find out the consequences if I didn't think fast. One of Oakland's finest approached as I rolled down the window. I said, hello, officer. He said, hello, ma'am. Do you have working headlights? My brain was thinking, is that a trick question? Do I say yes or no? I said, yes, sir. As I reached to turn them on and off again, I had to turn them on, which means I was driving in the dark without headlights. Okay, I think I can work with this, I thought to myself. Oh, I am so sorry, officer. I thought they were on. I stopped to let someone use my jack over on 5th Avenue, and it was daylight, I said. May I see your driver's license, ma'am? He asked. Yes, of course, but my purse is in the trunk, I said, knowing damn well, that I did not have a license. I got out of the car and grabbed my purse from the trunk and started digging around inside it. Oh my goodness, it's not in here. Sir, my wallet is not in my purse, I said, sounding frantic. Oh no, I have my traveler's checks in there. I'm flying to Minneapolis tomorrow and I have my license and traveler's checks in my purse, I said as I started to cry. And the Oscar goes to Carol Foster. Yes, that was my maiden name. I flopped down in the seat and looked up at him. The officer said, it's okay, ma'am. Stay calm. You can have someone come get you to go down to the station to file a report. Do you have a way home? I pointed behind me to my apartment and said, I live right there. I was pulling over to park when I saw you behind me. He said, smiled and said, good. Calm down, then get your things and go inside. Call someone to take you to the station. Have a good night. Phew! As he pulled off, I cried for real. All I kept thinking was that my family would have to call my home office in Minneapolis and tell them that I would be delayed because I was arrested for driving without a license. Although God was probably frowning at my lying, I still thanked him for getting me out of that mess. I promised him when I returned home that I would get my driver's license. I kept my promise 2 weeks later after I returned from the training as a claims examiner from Northwestern National Life Insurance. I enjoyed my new position and I worked hard. I planned to continue taking the bus to work, but I was ready to get a car. With a higher paying job, I was making more money and wanted to buy a car, but I didn't have any credit. I asked Julian if he would co-sign for an auto loan for me, as he had done for my brother Gilbert. He did so with my promise never to default on the loan. I promised and was rewarded with my first car, a brand new powder blue Mercury Lynx. Wow, the new car's smell was wonderful. Mercury Lynx, you ask? What is that? It's equivalent to the little Escort that they made. I think Ford Escort, same thing. Little 3-door hatchback. I loved walking to the lake on the weekends, even though I owned a car. One day on my walk to the lake, I passed this guy who smiled and spoke. I said hello and kept walking. He said, "Excuse me," and I turned around. He asked if he could walk with me, and I laughed because he was headed in the opposite direction. But I said, sure. His name was Bruce. He had green eyes and freckles. Yes, he was black, just light skinned. We walked to the lake and sat around chatting. He was interesting and complimentary. We exchanged numbers, and after a few small dates, we became involved. After a month, Bruce basically moved into my apartment. Bad move, ladies. Bad move. Real bad move. Bruce was in between jobs, as he indicated to me. So, my stone of support naturally turns his dilemma into my mission. There are guys who they call Prince Charmings because they like rescuing damsels in distress. I'm the female version of that. I quickly found out that Bruce could talk the leather off of a cow, but he did not have the work experience needed to secure work easily. After a month without work and just sitting around, Bruce got a job at a donation center distribution site. He would get a check, but he was wasting it on marijuana and alcohol while bringing home lots of donation items, aka junk. He suggested that we take the items to the flea market and sell them. I just wanted him to bring money into the relationship. So if that was how he would do it, I was fine with it. His drinking was getting heavy and arguments were getting too regular. So if the flea market did not make some positive changes in our relationship, I did not see us lasting long. The first flea market trip required a deposit for the stall and an early morning trip to the flea market to set up. The night before the trip, Bruce came home late and drunk. I was too pissed to say a word. When morning came, these glasses, I could see. When morning came, Bruce was grouchy, but I told him we were going to do as we said. We loaded up the Lynx and drove to the flea market. Although it was Bruce's idea, I paid the entrance fee and did all the work. Unloading the vehicle, setting up the items, and talking to the customers, while Bruce sat in the car brooding. Seriously. I had enough. I told him, let's go. I am done with this, and we are done. He flipped, yelling and cussing and throwing everything into the car. By the time we got to my apartment, I knew I was through with him. I hid the little .22 caliber gun that my brother had given me for protection, just in case. He was apologetic, but I told him I do not like to argue or fight, and it was over. I found out he had been lying, sneaking out with his old girlfriend, not going to work while gullible Carol was paying all the bills. I vowed to myself, no more guys that drink, smoke, don't have a job, no car, and have relationship drama. I thank God for getting me out of that relationship and prayed for guidance, transparency, and obedience when it comes to relationships. I gave Bruce 30 days to find a place. Why, oh why did I do that, you ask? Because I am too nice for my own good. But Bruce was actually a gentleman. He knew it was over, and he blew it. He gave me my key, slept on the couch, and only come over if he didn't stay at his mother's or sister's house. I started going out more with my friends from NWNL, Lynn and Gloria. We hung out at clubs in San Francisco, Berkeley, San Leandro, and Oakland. You name the club, and we had probably been to it. One weekend, we went to a warehouse club in Berkeley. It was named Silks. It was huge, 3 levels of dance floors and bars for partying. I didn't drink anything but 7-Up when I went dancing, so I ignored the bar hounds. Lynn, Gloria, and I would go into the club together, then split up, then meet up again off and on all night. While we were split up, I was standing around watching the dancers on the dance floor when some guy asked me to dance. He was cute. He was dressed casually, but what threw me was his long hair. He was light-skinned and his hair was in the middle of his back, so I assumed he was biracial. We danced a little while, then exchanged numbers and went our separate ways. I did not mention it to Lynn and Gloria because Lynn seemed to think I had a thing for light-skinned men. The truth is that I like all types of men, and it just seemed that recently mostly light-skinned men would approach me. In the parking lot on the way to our cars, Jim, the guy I met, called out to me, "Carol, I will call you." Darn it! Lynn and Gloria looked at each other and started laughing. I laughed too because it really was funny. But that would be the only time the 3 of us laughed about something that Jim did. Keep in mind that being obedient to the Word of God is something that God wants of us regardless of our age and our desires. We aren't supposed to start being obedient after we've had all our fun. Not being obedient usually leads to problems, pain, heartache, and in some cases, death. The stones of spirituality are learning stones that should help us make better choices as we age. God is a permissive God and will allow us to keep making the same dumb choices until we realize that lack of obedience to God's word can be harmful. With that being said, Jim did call me the next day. We met at Crown Beach in Alameda to talk. I told him about my job and that I live by the lake, and I was recently out of a relationship that was full of lies and deceit. I told him the worst thing he could do was lie to me. That's still the worst thing you could do to me, is lie to me. Jim said, "I don't lie about who I am. There is no reason to lie. I will tell you who I am and what I have been through, and if you still want to hang out, that's good. And if you don't, no loss." I was impressed and ready for the truth, or at least I thought I was ready. Jim said, "I just recently got out of the hospital. I was shot several times. I used to sell drugs, and the competition thought they could get me out of the way. I still have a bullet lodged inside me because it was too dangerous for the doctors to remove it." He must have seen the blank stare on my face because then he said, "I don't sell drugs or mess with guns anymore. I stopped drinking and smoking while I was in the hospital recovering. I am married but separated because we are divorcing and I have an 18-month-old daughter. As he was speaking, I was counting how many of my 5 no-nos he was mentioning. And so far, there were 3. Yikes. Jim continued to tell me, I decided to turn my life around. I stay with my mom right now while I look for work. Now that is 4 and counting. It's a little difficult without a car, but I am a hustler. I will find a job. Bingo! He hit all 5 of my no-nos. I should have politely said, it was nice talking to you, made an excuse to leave, and never looked back. But I did not. Most guys are the rescuers of damsels in distress. But when I was younger, it was the guys that were in distress, and I was the rescuer. Didn't I tell you? Nowadays, they call it an enabler. Remember, I know that God is a permissive God. I asked him to guide me away from the type of men with negative character traits. Yet, when one steps in front of me and honestly tells me he is not the man for me, I did not make the choice to walk away. God was allowing me to jump from the pan, Bruce was the pan, into the fire with Jim. Sometimes our lessons are remembered when they make more of a boom impact. You will see. Needless to say, Jim and I started dating. He would get dropped off at my apartment. I assumed it was by his mother or friends. We would hang out or walk to the lake. A week into dating, Jim met Bruce, and they were respectful of each other. They actually seemed to enjoy talking to each other on the few occasions that they spoke. Jim did get a job working construction. Only 4 of the 5 no-nos existed after that. A few weeks into our relationship, I was going to drive down to my mom's in Campbell to help her throw my sister Sabbath a slumber party for her 6th birthday. Jim asked if he could drive me down to my mom's on Friday and use the car on Saturday to work. I said, sure. On Sunday, Jim picked me up at my mom's apartment, and we talked and laughed and listened to the radio on the hour-long ride back to Oakland. When we got back to my apartment, I noticed a few things out of place. Some of my pictures in the living room were moved or face down. The items on my dresser were in the laundry basket in the closet. I asked Jim, why is all my stuff moved around? Jim said, oh, I was cleaning, and it was easy to wipe stuff off if I moved it. Sorry. Oh, don't apologize. I didn't know. Thanks, I said. I also noticed that Bruce's bag of personal items that he kept in the corner in the living room was gone. Where's Bruce's bag of stuff? I asked as I pointed to the corner by my television and VCR stand. Bruce found an apartment. I saw him on Saturday when he came by to get his stuff. He said he will call you next week sometime, Jim said as he took a small gun out of his pocket and set it on the shelf. What do you have that for? I asked Jim as a chill ran up my spine. Protection, of course, he said. I told you I do not like guns and I don't want them in my apartment, I said with a tremor in my voice. I was nervous. I have to keep it, he said, then left the room. I noticed he was quickly picking up his old ways, if he ever left them. I wondered if Bruce and Jim had finally had words. It was a strange arrangement to have one ex-boyfriend sleeping on the couch, while the current boyfriend occasionally stayed over in my room. I sighed and was actually relieved that the issue with Bruce was resolved. I grabbed my stack of bills from the glass circular dining room table and sat down to pay them, some of which were overdue. I was not the best at keeping my bills paid on time. I always paid my rent on time because I promised myself that I would never get evicted or be without a roof over my head. I always pay for my car note because I made the promise to Julian not to default on my loan. But the iMagnet credit card and the electronics store charges were consistently late. I was working on that trait, but that was just one more sign of disobedience. God was frowning down on me and I needed to change, I thought to myself. Jim startled me when he came up behind me and asked if he could borrow my car to go to his mother's house. I said sure, because I wanted him and the gun out of my apartment. While Jim was gone, Bruce stopped by to see if he left something. When he realized that Jim was gone, he said he needed to talk to me. Carol, I know when we were a couple, I didn't treat you like I should have, and you deserve better. But Jim is lying and cheating on you. Friday after Jim came back from dropping you at your mom's house, he came here. I was about to leave and he asked me if I wanted to party with him and a couple of women. Of course I said sure. He called them up and told them to come over. After he hung up, he moved all of the stuff that looked like you lived here. He put your pictures face down or out of the way and moved stuff in your bedroom, Bruce said. I told Bruce, I noticed stuff all moved around and asked Jim about it. He said it was because he was cleaning up. I am so stupid. No, that dude is just real slick, Bruce said. I thought I was slick. You better watch yourself, he said as he turned to leave. I locked the door after Bruce left and sat down. I really wasn't mad. I knew something was up with Jim. About 15 minutes later, Jim showed up. He asked me to take a ride to his mom's with him. I started to mention that he borrowed my car with the excuse that he was going to his mom's house. But why bother? I was really starting to see clearly. Thank you, Jesus, for the clarity. I agreed to go with him. I wanted to meet his mom. We went to East Oakland where Jim lived. When we pulled up at his mom's house and got out of the car, Jim said to go on in and he was going to speak to his neighbor for a minute. He had a small bag in his hand. I didn't say anything, but I suspected it was drugs. And I realized that my eyes were finally open. I went inside his mother's house and said, hello, I'm Carol. Jim told me to come inside. She said, hi, how are you? I said, doing pretty good. Where is Jim, she asked. I told her. He said he needed to speak to his neighbor a minute. She raised a suspicious eyebrow and shook her head. You need to smack him in the head when he comes in, I said jokingly. She looked at me seriously and said, girl, if I ever hit Jim, I had better kill him, because if I didn't kill him, he would kill me. I was waiting for her to chuckle, laugh, or smile, but she didn't. It sent a chill up my spine. If your own mother is afraid of you, then what the hell am I doing hanging with you? It was at that moment I knew I needed to get out of the fire. Jim came in and kissed his mom on the forehead. He asked me if I was ready to go. I said, sure. I told his mother goodbye. She said goodbye. On the ride home, I told Jim that I gave my landlady a 30-day notice because I was probably going to move in with my grandmother. He said he thought we were going to keep living together. I told him that it wasn't working out financially since he did not work full-time. He wasn't happy about that. Over the next couple of weeks, Jim barely spoke to me, but he loved my car. He had begun just taking it. One Thursday, 2 weeks before I needed to move out, I decided I needed to tell Jim it was over. I hoped it would be easy breaking it off with Jim as it was ending it with Bruce. Not. It was about 7 p.m. when Jim showed up at my apartment. He was an hour late and I was tired of it. I was sitting on my couch and he came in and sat on the arm of the couch. I said, Jim, it's not working. We need to split up. I like you, but I don't love you. Jim was not happy. He said, Carol, you said you loved me. You said we would make it work. You said you would help me buy a car. Why now? I told him all the things he was doing, carrying the gun, doing his own thing, and using my car like it was his, were too much for me to deal with. Jim got up off the couch and took his gun out of his pocket. He said, "This makes you nervous?" as he held the gun out. "It shouldn't make you nervous until I use it on you." He pointed it at me. "You don't love me, huh? You want it to be over? I can make it over." I pleaded with him, "Jim, please put that down. Please don't point it at me." He started raising his voice. "You don't know what it feels like when you love someone and they tell you they don't love you anymore, Carol." He was walking and pacing. He said, "I should shoot you right now and take all your stuff. If I shoot you and took all your babies," he said as he waved the gun in the direction of my television and VCR and receiver, "they would think someone robbed you and shot you." Jim yelled and threatened and pointed the gun at me for a couple of hours. I pleaded and cried the whole time. "Please, Jim, do not kill me," I cried. "I'm sorry. Jesus, please, Lord," I cried with tears streaming down my face. "Oh, you want Jesus to help you?" Jim yelled at me as he picked up the Bible my mother gave me and threw it at me. "Here, see if he can help you." As Jim walked towards the kitchen, he said, "Don't try to run out the door. I would hate to shoot you in that pretty back of yours." He chuckled. When Jim came back a couple minutes later, he had a knife in his hand. I started crying harder. Jim laid the knife on the coffee table and said, "This is for you. Go on, use it. Stab it in my heart." "I'm sorry," I cried. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "Stop crying, Carol," he yelled. Then calmly he said, "I ain't going to kill you. I just wanted you to see how I felt when you said you didn't love me. It hurt. I felt like I was going to die. I will be all right. We are over. Are you still going to help me get a car?"